She was sold as a slave, owned like property. But in just 15 years, she would command armies, kill a king, crown herself Sultan of Egypt, and change the course of history forever. This is the story they don't want you to know. By the end of this video, you'll discover how one woman destroyed every rule written against her, and why the men who tried to erase her from history ultimately failed. Because 800 years later, we're still saying her name, Shajar al-Durr. Cairo, 1240. Imagine this. You're a young woman, maybe 16 or 17. You don't even know your exact age because nobody bothered to record it. You were born somewhere in the Turkic steppes of Central Asia. Your family probably sold you, or maybe raiders took you. It doesn't matter. You're property now. You stand in a slave market, and men examine you like cattle. Your value, your beauty, your ability to entertain, to serve, to disappear when told. But here's what they didn't see. Behind those eyes was a mind sharper than any sword in Egypt. A wealthy sultan named al-Salih Ayyub buys you, not as a worker, as a concubine for his harem. Most women in your position accept this fate. Survive. Obey. Fade into history without a name. But Shajar al-Durr? She studied every move in that palace like a chess grandmaster. She learned to read and write, rare for women. She memorized the Quran. She understood politics, military strategy, economics. And when she gave birth to the Sultan's son, Khalil, everything changed. Now, most history books skip what happened next. They jump straight to her power, but that's because what she did to get that power was absolutely ruthless. Let me show you. The education of power. While other concubines competed for the Sultan's attention with beauty, Shajar al-Durr competed with brains. She became his closest advisor. When military reports came in, he asked her opinion. When governors sent letters, she drafted the replies. The court whispered, "Why does the Sultan listen to a slave woman?" But al-Salih knew something they didn't. In a world where every man wanted his throne, Shajar had no army, no family connections, no path to power without him. She was the only person he could truly trust. Then, in 1249, disaster struck. The Seventh Crusade. Tens of thousands of European knights, led by King Louis IX of France, invaded Egypt. They wanted to conquer Cairo, destroy Islam's power in the region, and claim Egypt for Christianity. And Sultan al-Salih? He was dying. Tuberculosis was eating him alive. Imagine being Shajar in that moment. The man who gave you everything, freedom, power, respect, is dying. Foreign armies are marching toward your city. The generals are panicking. The court is collapsing into chaos. What do you do? What Shajar did next would make Machiavelli look like an amateur. She made a decision that was brilliant, dangerous, and completely illegal. And it worked. The Secret Reign, November 1249. Sultan al-Salih Ayyub died. Shajar al-Durr did something no woman in Islamic medieval history had ever attempted. She hid his death. Think about this. The leader of Egypt, the commander of all armies, the man defending Islam against the Crusaders, was dead. And nobody knew. Shajar moved his body to a secret location. She forged his signature on military orders. She issued commands in his name. Food was delivered to his chambers daily, as if he were still eating it. The generals? They thought they were receiving orders from their sultan. The governors? They believed he was orchestrating the defense. The enemy? They had no idea Egypt's leader was a corpse. And for 3 months, Shajar al-Durr ruled Egypt from the shadows. She commanded the armies. She directed the battle strategy. She negotiated with generals. And here's the crazy part. It worked. The Egyptian forces, under her command, defeated the Crusaders. They captured King Louis IX of France himself, one of the most powerful men in Europe, and held him for ransom. A slave woman had just defeated the King of France, without anyone knowing it was her. But secrets this big don't stay buried. When the truth came out, the reaction was explosive. And what happened next would change everything, not just for Shajar, but for every woman watching this story unfold. The coronation. When news of the Sultan's death finally spread, Egypt faced a crisis. His son and heir, Turan Shah, was far away. It would take weeks for him to arrive. The Crusaders were still a threat. The government was paralyzed. The military commanders gathered. Someone had to rule until Turan Shah arrived. And they chose Shajar al-Durr. Not as regent, not as advisor, as sultan. On May 2nd, 1250, a former slave woman was crowned Sultan of Egypt. Coins were minted with her name. Friday prayers were said in her honor. Official documents bore her seal. For 80 days, Shajar al-Durr was the official, recognized ruler of one of the most powerful Muslim empires on earth. Think about what this meant. In a world where women couldn't testify in court, couldn't inherit property, couldn't even leave their homes without male permission, a woman sat on the throne of Egypt. But here's the thing about breaking every rule. Someone always wants to put the rules back. When her stepson Turan Shah finally arrived to claim his throne, he was furious. Not grateful that Shajar had saved his kingdom, furious that a woman had dared to rule it. He publicly humiliated her. He threatened to send her back to the slave markets. He announced he would erase her from all records. Shajar al-Durr had spent her entire life being underestimated by men, and she'd learned one critical lesson. If you show a man mercy, he'll use it to destroy you. What happened in the palace that night is still debated by historians, but what we know for certain is this. Turan Shah made one fatal mistake. He forgot who he was dealing with. The assassination, April 1250, a feast in the palace. Turan Shah is celebrating his coronation, drinking wine, surrounded by his supporters. The doors burst open. Armed Mamluk soldiers, the elite military force loyal to Shajar, storm in. Turan Shah runs. He makes it to a wooden tower by the Nile River. The soldiers set it on fire. He leaps into the river, trying to swim to safety. They fill his body with arrows until the Nile runs red. Did Shajar order his death? History doesn't give us a signed confession, but here's what we know. The Mamluks who killed him were her soldiers. The generals who supported the coup were her allies. The person who benefited most was her. And within days, she was crowned sultan again. This time with no rivals left to challenge her. Now, I know what you're thinking. She had him killed? Isn't she supposed to be inspiring? Here's the truth. History isn't a fairy tale. Shajar al-Durr lived in a world that wanted to erase her, that wanted to own her, that would have killed her without hesitation if she showed weakness. She didn't survive by being nice. She survived by being smarter, more strategic, and more ruthless than every man who underestimated her. The price of power. But even a woman who could command armies couldn't defeat the politics of her time forever. The Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad, the supreme religious authority in the Islamic world, sent a letter dripping with contempt. If you have no men capable of ruling, we'll send you one. The Egyptian elite, uncomfortable with a female sultan, began to pressure her. She'd broken too many rules, gone too far. So Shajar made a calculated move. She married one of her Mamluk generals, Aybak, and officially made him sultan while she ruled from behind the throne. She thought she could control him. After all, she'd controlled everything else. But Aybak started to believe his own title. He took a second wife, a political slight that publicly diminished Shajar's power. And on April 28, 1257, in one of history's brutal ironies, Aybak was murdered in his bath. Did Shajar order it? Again, history whispers, but doesn't scream. But she was immediately implicated. Aybak's first wife had Shajar arrested, and the woman who had defeated Crusaders crowned herself sultan and rewritten history. was beaten to death with wooden clogs by Ibak's concubines and thrown off a palace wall. Her body lay in a ditch for 3 days before anyone dared to bury her. So why am I telling you this story? Because Shajar al-Durr's life teaches us something that every woman needs to hear. The world will never give you permission to be powerful. Society didn't give Shajar permission to rule. Religion didn't give her permission. History tried to erase her name from the books. Some medieval chronicles literally refused to record that a woman was sultan. But for 80 days, undeniably, a former slave woman ruled Egypt. She proved it was possible, even when they killed her for it, even when they tried to erase her. We're still here, 800 years later, saying her name. And here's what terrifies those who want to keep women powerless. If one slave girl could become Sultan of Egypt in 1250, what can you become in 2025? Shajar al-Durr didn't wait for the world to be fair. She didn't wait for men to recognize her brilliance. She didn't wait for permission. She studied when they thought she was just decorative. She led when they thought she was incapable. She fought when they thought she was weak. Yes, she paid the ultimate price, but she also achieved the impossible. And every time someone tells you, women can't do that, or that's not your place, or who do you think you are? Remember the slave girl who became sultan? Remember Shajar al-Durr. And ask yourself, if she could do the impossible with nothing, what can I do with everything I have? This is part 1 of our They Said She Couldn't series. Next week, we're covering the single mother on welfare who was rejected 28 times before becoming the richest author alive. If Shajar's story moved you, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to show this to more women who need to hear it. And in the comments, tell me, which woman's impossible story should I tell next? Subscribe to She Speaks Anyways, because we're telling the stories they tried to bury. I'll see you next week.